Sometimes people ask me, I did this first service, I'm going to do it again, but they say, got any like funny, weird airplane stories? I spend about 200,000 miles a year. Delta says I'm one of their top 3 flyers, but they've never given me a ticket for free. I would think that's the least they could do, but I was flying to Brazil from Atlanta to Rio de Janeiro. It's about a 9.5 hour, it's overnight, and I tend to occasionally snore. Now, if you don't snore, you're probably lying. And don't give me this garbage. I stayed awake to see if I snored. My boys, one time we were doing something, they recorded me snoring. I said, I'll kill you if I have a way to have a good alibi. But anyway, I occasionally snore, and I occasionally snore on an airplane. And so I was in this plane, and I was in a row that was just a single row, and apparently I just must have really been sawing logs, as they say. I mean, I was just like passed out. And I felt subconsciously like somebody was, touching me, but I was such a deep sleep, I really didn't realize it until finally she does this enough. I open my eyes, and there's this woman that's like 1 foot in front of my face. It wasn't the flight attendant. It was just another passenger. And she said, "Sir, you are snoring so loud, nobody on this airplane can sleep." And I said, I'm sorry. I blamed it on the airplane food. I'm sorry. And then I couldn't sleep because, honestly, I was afraid the pilot was going to come out next. But anyway, that'll kind of lighten you up a little bit here before I give you the word. Are you ready for God's word today? It won't hold you long because I'll be hungry before too long. But I want to talk to you about trust. About trusting God. And how does that play out in our lives? It doesn't matter. I'm not asking you to be a pastor. I'm not asking you to be a missionary. I'm not asking you to, travel. I'm not asking you to be a worship leader. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just asking you, do you trust God in your everyday life? The beginning of this year, I was praying, as I often do, about the upcoming year, and I felt an urging from God, as I would say, a question, a statement, a direction. It wasn't audible, wasn't spooky, but I heard this phrase, "Do you really trust me?" And I kind of felt like it was from God, but honestly, I was a bit offended by the question. Well, of course I trust you. Now, in St. Louis, we get offended at God. I'm sure in Danville, everybody's perfect and nobody gets offended but God in Danville. But in St. Louis, we're Missouri, it's the show me state, and so we get offended because we want to be shown. And I said, of course. And then I kind of just praying, thinking, and I heard it again. Do you really trust me? And by this time, in my lightning fast brain, I realize there's something bigger here than just a statement that's come into my mind. And so I start to think about it, and I realized God was challenging me to a higher level of trust. And what I've come to believe now over these last 6 months is that what I really believe, and while I don't have the vision of it, I don't have the clarity of it, I'm in like an educational process, and this year, building my trust for something God's wanting to do in and through me in 2020 is what I've come to conclude. And so I said, well, of course. And then what I was led in my heart to do is I went back to the scripture, and I felt like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to some old stories that are really famous for trust and you know, really obeying God, and read them again and kind of mull over these stories and try to figure out. And I kept coming back to the same thing. Trust was not just vocal, but trust was demonstrated by actions. Every story I came across. And it was the same thing. It was people giving God their little bit and God making it much bigger than what you gave him. God, I loved it how I heard one man say it. It says, we give God slices and he gives us back loaves. We give our not enough into the hands of the God that's more than enough. And you know, what we've got here today, and I don't know how, you know, confident or insignificant in the realm that you may fall in, but we give God what we consider sometimes very insignificant anythings. And we don't say, well, God, how could that ever be used in the kingdom? And that's all God's asking. Say, you know what? I didn't ask you for what you don't have. I just asked you for what you do have. And so, you know, I started reading these stories. The first one that I came across was, again, I've read it, spoken about it, but 2 Kings 4, when Elisha came to the widow lady and said, let me ask you this question. What do you have? And she felt like many of us do. You know, she felt like that I've got so little, and in reality, I mean, I guess you could call it a little fib or whatever, but she said, I've got nothing. And Elisha said, but no, you know, really, what do you have? And she said, well, okay, honestly, I got a little bit of oil, but I don't have enough to do anything with. How many people in here have ever told God, I don't have enough of anything to do anything with it? And we chalk it up as God could never do anything because, you know, I've thought that different times in my life. I've told this story many times here, but I come from a broken home. I come from an alcoholic's father, and you know, I tell people, I mean, it sounds funny, but you know, I wouldn't have picked me because I didn't really think I had anything to give. But anyway, so the widow said, I got just a little bit of oil. He said, perfect, man. That's all we need. We just need something. And so he says, go out, borrow all these vessels. He said, God's going to multiply this oil. So she goes out. You know the story. She borrows all these vessels. She brings them in. Here's the key. She didn't sit in her living room and recline on her lazy boy recliner and drinking Coke Zero and eating popcorn and say, I trust God. Although that's not a bad idea, drinking Coke Zero and eating popcorn at times, but that's not demonstrating the trust. So as Elisha pours the oil, every time she pours another vessel in front of him, the oil multiplies. The moral of the story, she did something, and God did something. The second story is over in Matthew 14. It's when Peter walked on the water. Jesus is coming to him. You know the story. Peter, all of his life, has gotten a pretty bad rap for, you know, trying it and then start to fail. But, you know, I really want to preach and talk about the 11 guys that never got out of the boat. They didn't seem too smart. Jesus is coming. You know, I mean, truthfully, if you can't walk on water, he's going to rescue you. So what do you, I mean, you could have been famous. Now they're infamous because they didn't do anything. Peter says, if it's you, I'll come. And when Peter flopped his leg out of whatever type of boat they were in, that was, I'm trusting you, God. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, we trust you, Lord. Please come help us. And while you're at it, bring something to eat and help us get to the other side of the shore. And Peter says, I'll come. And so Peter stepped out of the boat, and what a, you know, I guess I could have missed part of the story, but I don't think Peter went to a walking on water school before he met Jesus. You know, he just, I don't, what is, jaws down there? I don't know. His trust was not demonstrated with his mouth. It was demonstrated with his action. The third story is also in Matthew 14 when the crowd was hungry and Jesus had been preaching a long time apparently. I mean, I've heard some people say it seemed like it was a series, but anyway, it was a long, long, long time Jesus had been speaking. And the crowd was falling asleep and they were hungry and the disciples come. And I love how Pastor Robert Morris from Dallas tells his story, but he goes to Jesus and Jesus, these people are getting hungry. And when you get I apologize, ladies. I don't know why they said 5,000 plus women and children. I'm sorry. If it was me, I would have said, we got 5,000 women plus a bunch of guys and kids. I mean, I would have been more politically correct. But anyway, it wasn't that way. And I don't know. But anyway, so there could have been as many as 15, 20,000 people. You get 15 or 20,000 people in one area hungry, you got a problem. Somebody's going to lose an arm. It's just going to happen. I mean, you imagine, I know that big balloon thing out here. They said there was, 10, 12,000 or something out there, 15,000. I mean, you don't sell some popcorn and soda, somebody's going to get in trouble. And so Jesus said, you feed them. So all we got's a little bit of bread and some fish. And Jesus said, perfect, that's all I need. And just said, Jesus prayed. And I love this story, how when Jesus prayed, it didn't multiply when he prayed. It multiplied as they started saying, here's a piece for you, here's a piece for you, here's a piece for you, here's a piece for you. And wow, this is pretty cool. I tear off another piece and it's like something grows back. They didn't say, well, Lord, we believe you're going to, woof, poof, and tractor trailers, semis are going to come in here with all the food we need. Start to give, start to tear, and the miracle started to come. And that's what God's asking us. Do you trust me by getting out of the boat? Do you trust me? And then there's another story. The prophets in the Old Testament, the Baal prophets were, their God was God, and Elijah said, well, my God. And so they said, well, let's build an altar, and you call on your God, I'll call on mine. The God that answers by fire, then that's who the God is. And the prophets of Baal called on Baal, and nothing happened. I thought Elijah was being a little bit overboard in the thing. He got an altar, okay. Then he dug a ditch, okay. I can go with the ditch, but then when he pours water in the ditch, I think, dude, you just be happy with what you got, man. But he just wanted to prove so much that God was God, and every bit of water he poured in that ditch was, I trust God. When he put that animal on the sacrifice, the altar, I'm trusting God. And I'm asking you today, this church is doing a lot of things from, different outreaches you're doing here in your city, and baptizing children, starting a campus in West Lafayette, and I just believe God sent me here today to just ask you, can you really trust me? And it's not with words, but it's with actions. It's doing something that makes a difference. The truth is, fear is really the culprit that, we don't think we got enough. We're afraid of ourselves. We're afraid of the outcome. Nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to look dumb. I'm reading a book. I'm almost finished with it right now. It's called Do It Scared by a lady by the name of Ruth Sukov. Then is it, there you go. Can you see it? Anyway, it's called Do It Scared. It's really a tremendous book that just helps identify, her whole point is, hey, don't wait till the fears are gone. Just identify what areas you're having the most trouble with and just do it. And I'm asking you today as kindly and as seriously as I can you just step out of the boat? Can you go get some vessels? Can you build an altar? Can you pinch off some bread? Here's what it comes down to. I've met three kinds of people in life, and two of them, they don't trust God, and they end up not accomplishing anything with their life. One of them does. And those of you that do know me, I love visuals, and so I brought my own visual. But I want you to imagine this morning that I have brought up on the stage a boiling pot of water. That boiling pot of water represents the culture we live in, the environment that we're in, and it's just life. And that's, John said it a couple times, the seasons that we live in, and we're all at those different seasons. That's what that water is. Some people are like this carrot. This carrot represents the people who at one point in their life, they were solid, strong, they'd do anything, been in the church, been a pillar in the church, been a pillar in their city, been a pillar on their job. But if you drop this carrot into that boiling pot of water, what happens? It gets soft. And I've met those kind of people where, man, they were fired up at one time, and they would do anything. And pastor just had to raise up his hand, and they'd jump, like, count me in. But then over time, and the water conditioned them and boiled them, and they become soft, and now you can't get them to step out of the boat for anything. The second kind of person is an interesting, unique person, and that person is like an egg. You came into this church, and some of you are probably there. You're not really been around church long. You've not really been, believer a long time. Things are new to you, and you're pliable, and you just, man, you want to soak up, man. Hell, I want to do anything. I want to do everything. To drop this egg in the water, what happens after a little while, put people in this environment called the boiling water, and then eventually what happens, the soft becomes hard. And now those people who were once soft and pliable, now they're difficult. The third kind of person is the one that really trusts God and makes a difference. And I got you right here in my pocket. And that is a coffee bean. Now you drop this carrot in the water and it's hard and it goes to soft. You drop that egg in the water, it's soft and it goes to hard. When you take them both out, it's still boiling water. But you drop this bean in the water, and the bean changes the culture, and it changes it from water to coffee. I said this in first service, and Heidi told me after. She said, I knew eventually there would be a redemptive story in coffee. But this is the person that will change the world. This is the person who will get out of the boat, who will pinch off the bread, who will build the altar, who will go get the vessels. And this is what God wants you to be, is to be a being. And I know that each of you have different environments you live in. Some of you have probably come in here today, and I don't mean this disrespectful, but your life might be a wreck. You feel like the carrot, or you feel like the egg, and you've even said, I don't know what I'm going to do if things don't change. You're just getting beat up. This doesn't make me great, but I really believe God sent me here to help you today. I'm not the brightest bulb in the box. I got issues, but I just ask God, help me to change the environment instead of the environment changing me. And I don't know what you're facing. I really don't. But I know if I can challenge you today, will you just trust